Good afternoon. Today is Monday, January 13th. So if you're watching this on the replay, thanks for coming on. This is a live recorded show. Welcome to your daily dose of salt and light with myself, Nadine Ness. I'm going to be covering quite a bit today. I'm going to try to go through it fast. Well, actually not as bad as some other days, but there was so much talk about Trump's threatened tariffs on Canada. That's coming up quite soon. He says by the time he comes in office, which is January 20th. And then that conversation went from the tariffs to, well, maybe Canada should become the 51st state. And then that conversation went to not only Canada, maybe Greenland should become part of Canada. And we're going to take back the Panama Canal. So there's been so much happen. I almost feel like we're living into like a movie, a full-on drama-ridden movie. But I'm going to talk a little bit on what I believe might be happening, why Trump potentially is looking at acquiring Greenland for it to become part of the United States, what could potentially be beneficial for the United States, as well as Canada, and some of the plays that I think he's doing. And first, I will cover the thing that had my blood boiling. I will show you the post first. So I'll show you the video because it's a video of Jolie, MP Jolie, Melanie Jolie, being interviewed by CTV News. And I might pause it. It's a 3-minute thing. I might pause it to do some commentary. Let me know if the sound is working great. We were having sound issue the last few weeks, but I think we've got it fixed. So if you can hear me, let me know where you're watching from. Again, this is live. I love it when my viewers comment and interact with me because it makes it a lot more fun. Yeah, and sometimes some of the places that I'm live streaming to doesn't work properly. So I'd like to at least see comments from each one of them. And not only that, when you comment on the videos, it helps the videos spread. So, and it helps get it with the algorithms and stuff. So yeah, we'll start with that video. Feel free to comment too on your feelings while we're watching it.
Can navigate.
So give me one second. I'm just bringing it up here, getting it ready for you guys. Trying to think, is that one better or this one? Maybe this one. There you go. I'll play it. And let me know if you can hear it as well. Live, Love, Laugh says she's from Vancouver Island, BC. Thanks for listening.
So if these tariffs are applied as he has threatened them to be, which we don't know the case, he hasn't announced that, you know, the specifics of it, but he's saying 25%. I was interviewing 6 economists, the top 6 economists, the chief ones for all the big banks the other day. And collectively, they said the hit to the economy, we're looking to the tunes of millions of jobs. You're looking at a 3% contraction and essentially an immediate recession. So it's in that vein, against that backdrop, I ask you about what retaliation would look like. Is your government prepared to cut off supplies of energy, for example, to the United States?
What I can tell you is everything is on the table. And that's the conversation we will have, the Prime Minister, Minister LeBlanc, and myself, with the premiers next week. And that's a conversation also I'll take to Republican senators and key Republican decision makers in Washington next week. Because this is indeed a decision that would be taken by.
So she didn't say, interesting, she didn't say President-elect Trump. She's going to meet with key Republican senators. That's interesting.
President-elect Trump, that would have devastating impacts on Canadians. And so for those who are watching us right now, it is important to understand that the threat is real and we're acting on it. And that's why I'm calling every political leader in this country to be on board, because this is not time for division. This is not time for weakness. This is time of strength and unity.
I guess I would just ask, though, if
Okay, so after the last, was it 8 years since 2016, 2015 when he was elected? Almost 10 years? Now they want unity. Now they want the country to come together, when the Liberal government has essentially destroyed the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan. But now they want us to come together. Okay.
if you are coming out of, because it's not just the Conservatives, it's all the opposition parties. And the issue is, like, they're becoming even more critical, because they would argue, I think, the Prime Minister has put the country in this spot by making the decisions he did when he did it. I'm not saying it's, not your decision to make, obviously, but he is the leader of your party. By waiting until when he did, we're in a more vulnerable place where, no one is really sure of exactly what's going to happen or what your government is going to pursue. Can you impart a sense of confidence on Canadians that your government can navigate this despite the weakened position we find ourselves in?
Let's not fall into the narrative that Canadians were looking for this, that Canadians did anything wrong to attract any form of tariff threats.
Okay. When I was watching this is the part that made my blood boil. She's like, let's not go into the narrative. So she's blaming the reporter to go into the narrative that this is Canadians' fault. That's not what the reporter said. The reporter said, your government. Do you see how she's deflecting? I'm going to point out something too. She's extremely nervous in this interview. Look at her blink rate and look at her breathing. She's breathing extremely fast. And I've seen this reporter before. Out of like most mainstream media, she's one of the ones that asks the harder question, not the questions I would ask, but she's asked the harder questions out of all of mainstream media, who usually just basically feed them what the Liberals want. But it's funny how she deflects, right? But that's what I would call subconscious response. So when you have something in your mind, she doesn't want to, they're subconsciously not thinking they're at fault and they're the problem. Therefore, when she answers, she's saying, don't blame Canadians, because her subconscious thinks they've done nothing wrong, as in like Melanie and Trudeau have done nothing wrong.
That's a false narrative.
No, that's not the narrative. The narrative is, the question is around the Prime Minister's decision and his timing. He had multiple opportunities to do what he did.
I've had many conversations with the Foreign Minister of Mexico, with the Foreign Minister of Denmark, with my colleagues in Europe. Trust me, nobody was completely looking forward to everything that President-elect Trump has said since he's been elected. And by the way, he never talked about it during the elections. We're reacting to his new rhetoric. Now, we've gone through Trump 1.0 administration. We've gone through tariffs because he has imposed in the past tariffs on steel and aluminum. We had a strong response at the time. We did a dollar for dollar retaliation package, and we were very specific, very surgical how we were reacting. That's what we'll do. But at the same time, 25% on the entire Canadian economy is extremely important. So that's why we have to put everything on the table.
I'm going to give her a break in the sense that English is her second language. So when she says 25% on the Canadian economy is extremely important, I think she means not important, but would have a really massive impact. So as someone whose first language is French, I'll give her a pass on that. I do that sometimes myself. Okay, so that's her response. She also mentioned a comment too, saying nobody was looking forward to, and then she caught herself. Like, if you see, there's a bit of a break before she says, like when she's talking about all the other prime ministers she's talked to. So that's the other funny part. So she's reaching out to all these people It sounds like, and almost talking bad about Trump or against his back, where they're conspiring against him almost. But then she kind of catches herself, and instead of saying we weren't looking forward to Trump, she's saying we weren't looking forward to what he saying he was doing. So she kind of reverses a bit and basically tries to paint it like we weren't expecting him to announce that. But in reality, we all know they weren't looking forward to President Trump winning. They're not necessarily liking that fact, but as people representing the country, you should never say that publicly. In Canada, then again, um, Trump Trump does, and Trump is like one of the only elected officials that can pull off stuff that most can't. And I call it the Trump effect. It's because of everyone expects it from him because that's just who he is, versus other elected officials are like, no, Canada's better than that or whatever. But I find it interesting. Now, speaking of other Liberal Party government officials not responding properly for diplomatic relationship, this one is, oh, what's his name? Is it? I thought I had it here. Mark Miller. Mark Miller. I have the video. I'm just going to bring it up. He's essentially making fun of all Americans. Really. That's the worst thing he should be doing. The last thing he should be doing. I'll play.
It's on a map, but it'll take them maybe a few years. Look, I said a couple weeks ago, this is like an episode of South Park. I'll start to get worried when they confirm Eric Cartman as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like, this is, it's silly. It's unbecoming, frankly, of a president, any president that would say that. But we do have to take it seriously, and I think there's a chance in hell it's going to happen. They'd have to find us on a map, but it'll take them maybe a few years.
They'd have to find us on a map. It'll take them maybe a few years, and then says they'll start being serious when they confirm Eric Cartman as the Joint Chiefs. Like, if you couldn't make fun of Americans more than that, and that's what he does. Wow. Okay. So that's some of the response. I'll give you Jagmeet Singh's response. I haven't watched this one, so I'm watching it first with you guys. I just got to bring it up here. I realize I didn't. And then I'll talk about Danielle Smith, who's, I think, doing what all of them should be doing. Here you go.
Wine and dine him, go in and meet with
It's not that long. It's 49 seconds.
them, trying to wine and dine him is a failed approach. Donald Trump is not rational. You can't discuss a plan over a meal with him. He is a bully. And bullies understand one thing, that is strain. So if he wants to pick a fight with Canada, we have to make sure it's clear that it's going to hurt Americans as well. There's going to be pain felt for not just Canadians, but also Americans. And so that's why I'm calling on my plan. We know that the United States needs our critical minerals. They're very important for the United States. So I'm calling on all political leaders to support turning off the taps on those critical minerals. Let's stop the flow of those critical minerals into the States. There's no quicker way to get Donald Trump to back away from tariffs than to shut off the tap on critical minerals. Going to meet with them, trying to wine and dine them is a failed approach.
You know, what's funny is he's saying that the only people that affects is Alberta and Saskatchewan. They don't care. They don't care that Alberta and Saskatchewan would get destroyed by that. But no, they don't care. At least it's not affecting Quebec and Ontario, right? That's who Jagmeet Singh is usually for. They don't care about Alberta. But let's see what Alberta's response to it is. So more importantly, Danielle Smith, what she's done. So I'll just switch screens here. I'll read out what she had to say. I just realized it's not quite Center. So, over the last 24 hours, I had the opportunity to meet President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago last night at his golf club this morning. We had a friendly and constructive conversation during which I emphasized the mutual importance of the US-Canada energy relationship, and specifically how hundreds of thousands of American jobs are supported by energy exports from Alberta. I was also able to have similar discussion with several key allies of the incoming administration and was encouraged to hear their support for a strong energy and security relationship with Canada. On behalf of Albertans, I will continue to engage in constructive dialogue and diplomacy with the incoming administration and elected federal and state officials from both parties, and will do all I can to further Alberta's Canada's interests. The United States and Canada are both proud and independent nations with one of the most important security alliances on earth and the largest economic partnership in history. We need to preserve our independence while we grow this critical partnership for the benefit of Canadians and Americans for generations to come. And then she shows pictures. Here, I'll see if we can see them. Yeah. That's Kevin O'Leary. I'll share also what he's been talking about this a lot. So Kevin, and just so you know, Kevin O'Leary he just like announced like a massive project in Alberta that he's heading. I guess he's financing some of it. It's a $70 billion project, and it's a massive data AI center. And I talked about it a few weeks ago on my show. Maybe while I play this video, I'll see if I can find the video. But it's interesting. It gives me things to think about because Danielle Smith is going there. If you think about what benefit Trump may want out of Canada most, it would be the natural resources and rare minerals that Canada has. And when you look at which provinces most of those are, you'd have the Northern Territories, which are not necessarily being excavated or whatever. Extracted is the proper term. There is some, but not as much as Saskatchewan and Alberta. But Saskatchewan and Alberta are the two provinces where the US would have most to gain, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's the uranium or the potash. When you look at the natural resources, those two provinces have the most to offer. And there's huge sentiment right now in the West that that Ottawa is not working for them, that you have a small minority of elected officials in Quebec or a majority of elected officials that are in Quebec and Ontario, but not representing Canada as a whole or Canada's best interests as a whole. They're more in it for themselves. Quebec would be a perfect example of that. So even in the new election, the official opposition for if the Conservative win, which I believe will happen, based on the polling, the official opposition would be the Bloc Québécois, which is basically a Quebec separatist party. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to play out in the next little while. But my thoughts are, considering there's so much animosity between Ottawa and Alberta and Saskatchewan, so part of me wonders if Trump is making a move to maybe just acquire Alberta and Saskatchewan. I could see that being the most easy way to go about it. Because if Ottawa says we're going to shut off the taps, well, the people who that affects the most is Alberta and Saskatchewan. And why do we know there's more natural resources, more rare minerals in Alberta and Saskatchewan? If you look at the recently released equalization payments, which I will find while the next video plays, the recent equalization payments, the same as before. Alberta and Saskatchewan get none, but Alberta and Saskatchewan send billions of dollars to the rest of the Canadian provinces. And when I show you that, if you haven't seen it before, you're going to be shocked. And I'll see if I can find it. But first, I'll play this video. While it's playing, I'll be Googling. So don't fault me for it. Is it? I'm just trying to find it. I may not have copied it. Sometimes, like when I see that it's a video, I'll put it on my screen up top. It's a little bit different because of the system that I use. I can't show you. Won't, if I was to play the video kind of right now, I have it at this screen. If I was to play it like this, you wouldn't hear the sound. So I have to switch it up and put it on my other screen here. There you go. So it's a minute long. I'll try to find the equalization plan while you guys watch this.
With President-elect Trump on this issue.
I had two topics that I wanted to talk to him about. Number one was integrating Canada towards a North American Union for greater strength, just period. The world's a difficult place these days, and most Canadians would like to look at that opportunity without giving up their sovereignty. So low-hanging fruit would be combined currency, for example, combining the Bank of Canada with the Fed, things like that. We are the largest trading partners. And just to ask him, because this was on Saturday, to say these meetings you're having with Trudeau and finance ministers from Canada, with all due respect, sir, are a complete waste of time. This guy's going to get eradicated out of the Canadian political landscape. Give the Canadians a chance to re-elect a leader, just like you got re-elected, that has a 4-year mandate, just like you have, and let's get down to business. And I hope they didn't land on deaf ears. I think he saw the rationale in that. That was one topic. But I had another agenda item that was very important to me. And
I still haven't found it. But it's interesting. He's basically pleading with him, don't put the tariffs, give us a chance to. I'm just going to go back and replay it quickly.
Give the Canadians a chance to get out of the Canadian political landscape. Give the Canadians a chance. Complete waste of time. This guy's going to get eradicated out of the Canadian political landscape. Give the Canadians a chance to re-elect a leader, just like you got re-elected, that has a 4-year mandate, just like you have, and let's get down to business. And I hope they didn't land on deaf ears. I think he saw the rationale in that. That was one topic. But I had another agenda item that was very important to me. And
interesting. So, for one, I think that approach is better than what we've seen from the Liberal government. And Kevin O'Leary seems to have a good relationship with Trump and with conservatives in the US. So I like his approach where he's basically saying, look, wait till we have like someone reasonable in office, and then can we discuss this again? Can you give us some time? And it's interesting because he says he looked as if he was kind of receiving that. Interesting. And it also exposes what O'Leary's thoughts on the entire thing is as well, because if O'Leary is suggesting that, then obviously it must not mean that it's a takeover. But he also suggested, and I've had a lot of discussions about this on Twitter, he also suggested, instead of it being like Canada, the 51st state, Kevin Leary suggested like a more of a union, like where both would have the same kind of bank, both would have the same currency. And when I tweeted about it, I remember thinking, well, I like that idea more, obviously, than the 51st state. But then there was a lot of things that people said in the comments that kind of made me think, well, maybe that wouldn't be that great of an idea. A lot of the comments were saying that's going closer to like the one world order, which would be in reality true, especially if there's less independence per country. There'd be more alliances between other countries, which right now might seem like okay because Trump is at the helm and he's supposed to be against the one world order, or whatever you want to call it. However, it could always change to a different government, especially if there's like massive election interference, all of that. So I get it. You don't want to get more towards globalism. You want to get more towards dividing the authority into the smaller community, smaller country, more independent country, and stuff like that. It makes it a lot less easier to do that. And look, I'm not saying that the one world order is a for sure thing, but you also can't ignore that this is one of the things that many high level groups are pushing for, like the World Economic Forum. It's one of their missions. And to be honest, I was a bit shocked when Trump was kind of talking more seriously about Canada becoming the 51st state. Now, there's other things that were discussed in the comments too that I hadn't really considered, but if we were to make the American dollar the same as the US, it actually would affect our economy in a big way, because a lot of the things that other country purchase from us, they do so because their dollar is worth more, so that makes it less expensive for them, even though we charge what we charge. So like farmers, for example, I know I had some farmers say in the comments, well, that would greatly affect our potential income, because then the US or other countries wouldn't be buying our products. They might buy instead US products. And because things are usually less expensive, if you were to do dollar for dollar right now, things are less expensive in the US. So then it would drive more of that purchasing, I guess, action towards the US. So it was all really, really good points. Again, I'm undecided on what I want, other than I want a different government. I want a better constitution. I would prefer us to be separated from the monarchy. So that was another I'll show you guys the tweet, because it got a lot of interactions as well. Here, I just got to find it because I tweet a lot. And I'll read out what it was that I said. I think if I search here. No, that's not searching on my profile. Here, I'll do it on my phone because that gives me more option. And what I suggested was a Republic of Canada. I'll still have to bring it up on the screen here, but I want to get the proper words. Let's see. Because in the last little while, why isn't it coming up? Maybe what I'll do, I'll just add it to my highlights, and then that'll be easier to bring up. Add, okay. Let's try that. The Twitter on the phone is very different than Twitter. There you go. I've got it. Then searching because on the phone I can just search within my profile. So I wrote, there's so much talk about Canada's sovereignty amidst 51st state discussion. We're not a sovereign nation and never have been. It's a myth to be considered so when we are under a monarchy. Our government was literally just prorogued by the King's Governor General this week, when the majority of Canadians want an election now. If we are serious about true independence, it's time to end this colonial hangover and embrace a republic, the Republic of Canada, one with a stronger constitution than the joke the Charter of Rights and Freedom has become since COVID. So this was a suggestion I made. It had a lot of comments 404 comments. And like I said, I talked about earlier when I asked, one of the things that I had suggested, what if instead of Canada becoming part of the US, it becomes like a thing almost like the European Union, and where we get the same currency, we can move back and forth, kind of like in Europe. But then a lot of people brought up some really good point about Europe, how it had negative effects on certain country, and that's why you had the Brexit happening, where I think it was Britain removed themselves. I think that's what Brexit was. I might be wrong. And just the fact that they're all kind of together is actually hurting all of the countries equally, which I agree. And the reason I post these things is because we should be having all these kinds of discussions to try to determine what will be better for Canada, but not just that, to try to see what the sentiment is for a lot of Canadians. And a lot of people will say, well, if you're asking those questions, that means you're a traitor. It doesn't state what my position is on all of it. I just told you what it is. I think a Republic of Canada would be way better. But then joining the US, or that then joining a union, and the reason I say a Republic of Canada, I think we would, I do fully believe in democracy, but the mob rule and mob mentality can often turn against its own people. So having a republic would mean that you'd have a structure that would have a clear document to protect the liberties and freedom of the people who live in it. And I think that would be the best solution going forward, especially let's say the rest of the world keeps going like insane towards like the woke ideology, all the other countries. And then it's just creating more and more pressure. It's a lot harder to move that agenda. I just realizing you guys didn't even get to see it. I read it, but you didn't get to see it because I hadn't switched the camera. There you go. It's a lot harder to move that agenda when you have countries that are very patriotic about their national identity, that will do everything they can to stop it from coming in. Now, we also have to focus on the fact that Trudeau has completely destroyed that national identity in the last 10 years. And you know what? We're not the only country that you're seeing that. That's what woke ideology does. It destroys who you are. It has to break all of the structures of who you are so that it can brainwash you with the new structures. So it's going to be really interesting to see which direction it's going to go. But okay, let's see what else. Who else has something to say about it? So Daniel Smith here did a video as well. Here, I've got to see if I have it up here. I do.
States, and I want to.
Here you go.
Yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about. She was asked specifically if, in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think? What do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas is owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works, and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on. So there are other things, I'm sure, that that we'll all talk about collectively, but let's just remember how integrated our markets are with the Enbridge system, the TC Energy system, that we have a product going back and forth across the border every single day. And we cannot do anything that harms Canadians in such a substantial way. So I just don't take that as a credible threat. I'm sure that the US administration won't either. So we should talk about things that we actually can do as opposed to empty threats.
If they were to proceed down that path for some reason, what would be Alberta's response?
Well, they will have a national unity crisis on their hands at the same time as having a crisis with our US trade partners. We just won't stand for that. And I don't think Ontarians and Quebec should stand for that as well. They shouldn't be standing by and listening while a federal minister talks about cutting off their energy supply. That's just not on. That makes no sense.
So I'm glad that Daniel Smith is saying this. I know that Doug Ford was threatening the same thing. And see, that's the thing. When America's the superpower that they are, they can call your bluff. They can actually afford to call your bluff. And the reason that Trump buys the Canadian oil is because it's cheaper. It's not because they can't produce it themselves. It's just cheaper to buy it from Canada than to produce it themselves. And part of that too is all the red tape that has happened in the last few years, especially with the Biden administration. If they do go full blown, let's take advantage of all of our own natural resources. The US doesn't need Canada. They don't need Canada to buy. And the thing that they forget about, the whole reason this even started was because Canada was considered a national security threat to the US, not Canadians per se, but the people that we've allowed in, the foreign interference that we've allowed in our government. And I'll show you guys some of the information that can kind of prove that. So I'm just going back here. Okay, so I'll show you that, and then I'll show you a video of a TV show and a movie that talks about security threat to the US. But first I'll show you some of the stuff that there's been a few people talking about. So Viva Frey posted this. Once you understand that Canada has become a national security threat to the United States, with 3 times more individuals on terror watch lists being encountered crossing into the US from Canada than from Mexico. And once you understand that we have MPs who are certifiably compromised, either by Chinese Communist Party and Indian interests, you might stop freaking out at Trump reacting to the problem and start freaking out at the problem itself. So, and then he's got 2 photos. So I'm just going to open them up. See, I might have to make the screen smaller. Give me 1 second to do that because I just seeing you guys can't see the whole photo. Let's see if that works. Yeah. Here you go. How many people on terror watch list have been intercepted at the border crossing into the United States from Canada? In fiscal year 2023, U.S. Customs Border Protection encountered 484 individuals on the terror watch list at the northern border with Canada. This number represented an increase from 313 encounters the previous fiscal year. So that's just in 1 year, it went from 313 to 484. Now let's look at the other photo. How many people on the terror watch list have been intercepted at the border crossing into the United States from Mexico? Fiscal year 2023, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported intercepting 169 individuals on the terror watch list at the border crossing into the United States from Mexico. I bet you most Canadians didn't know this. I didn't even know this. Let's see what the other one is. So Viva Frey said that. And then Lion Advocacy. I'll use this. I'll try to use this format because it might be easier to see for now. There you go. Lion Advocacy says this is one of the reasons Trump is issuing threats against Canadian sovereignty. Canada may have criminal MPs operating under the influence of bad foreign actors, but we can't charge these MPs because of the long-standing principle of protecting classified information. And he writes, so this is part of a report or a website. Some of the activities may be illegal, but are unlikely to lead to criminal charges owing to Canada's failure to address the long-standing issue of protecting classified information and methods in judicial processes, the reports say. So this is one of the things that we've noticed as a really big problem in Canada in the last few years. A lot of the investigations into like corruption within our liberal government were shut down simply by them having majority and voting to keep that information hidden. So it's not just the foreign interference, it's all type of criminal activities done by our elected officials. They have a lot of protection, like cabinet confidence type protections, and just simply they can shut down a committee investigation, and they can shut down even an investigation by the RCMP by simply not providing the documents, saying that basically it's classified information, you can't have it. So versus in the US, it's a little bit different. And but Trump knows this. Like his people know all this information. But I think it's more than that as well. I'm going to play this video clip that I think will open the eyes. And again, this is a TV show. It's not it's not exactly like true reality. Again, this is a TV clip, but if you consider the China and Russia to be the biggest potential threat to the US, you would see this as being something that Trump needs to consider, especially when it comes to the whole Greenland thing. So people might be like, oh, why would he want Greenland? It's probably just because of their natural resources or their rare minerals. No, I think it's more to that. I think it's a direct threat to their country. And I'll show you this video and that might help make sense. Again, this is like a clip for the TV show. And then there's Trump, as a clip of Trump here, but I can't crop it out. So we're going to just watch it. Oh, there you go.
Door.
I don't even know which show this is from.
The quickest way for Russia to penetrate our naval defenses is steaming from the Arctic to the North Atlantic. This is our military presence in the Arctic. These were Russia's Arctic military positions in 1995. Today, infantry, naval, radar, search and rescue, air defense, the biggest buildup since the Soviets fell. This is where we lost Russia's most sophisticated submarines in the North Atlantic for 3 weeks. This is where we found their Lasharic submarine, which we noticed only because it caught fire. We have no idea how many more there are, but we think they're around here, 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 and here. This is Cregan. You know what Cregan is?
A nuclear submarine base in Scotland.
All of the UK's nuclear weaponry is housed at Cregan. It's what makes them one of the 9 nuclear powers. Also, it's the only base in Europe where we can dock our nuclear subs. It's the last place we have any hope of detecting a Russian sub before it's in the vast Atlantic barreling toward New York. Cregan is target one in the European theater of war. The Scots hate nukes, and they hate English overreach, but they really hate having a bullseye on their heads. If Scotland had gone independent,
They would have closed the base.
in a second. When we took our forces out of Iceland, Russian sub-activity skyrocketed, as did air incursions. When we pulled our combat brigades from Europe, anyone?
Russia annexed Crimea.
Is there a universe in which the United States could afford to lose the base in Scotland?
No. But you went to Margaret Royland.
So did you.
I didn't ask her to blow up a ship.
Neither did I.
So basically, she's explaining the direct threat. Now, we got to think 10 steps ahead of what we're just seeing. Just think about it for a second. Right now, if the UK, Scotland, they're having a lot of issues, they're probably going to be switching government. There's probably going to be more move for independence. If Trump is thinking 10 steps ahead and want to have the ultimate hand over Russia, over protecting America from Russia, what would be the easiest way to do that? When you look at that map there, here. If they were to hit, they'd hit the East Coast, New York, all of those big city on the East Coast. That'd be the first one to hit. Now, if you want to protect that, if you had facilities and naval base, whether it's like nuclear or whatever, it would make more sense to have that in Greenland. So I see this more. We can talk about it and saying, oh, it's Trump trying to take more territory. I see this more. This is actually a play, like his hand is being played into the whole Russia-Ukrainian war. I see this him saying, well, let's see if you're going to encroach more. Let's see, Putin, if you're going to have a bigger army or if you're going to have more of those bases. It talked about all the bases. And again, this is a show, but it's also based on facts that are currently happening in the world. So if you're going to have all of those new bases being built at the top of Russia, then you have to consider, how do we protect ourselves from that? And I'm just thinking from, if I was President Donald J. Trump, if I want to assert dominance over Putin, how would I do that? Well, I can tell you one of the ways: if you acquire Greenland, if Greenland becomes a part of the US, I think the same could be said also for Canada, because, and it's not a secret, there's been talks about like the Communist Party of China coming through the Arctic into Canada. Like, it's been being talked about by our elected official, how that's a huge security risk, not just for us, but for the US. So when you think about long-term strategic actions, Greenland makes sense. Trying to get Canada to clean its own house makes sense. And add to that as well, and I've said this before, I think Trump is trying to create pressure as well in a government change in Canada to one that will be more friendly to him. Because if a world war, a third world war is coming, you don't want a government that's completely against you either. So I think these are all strategic moves that he's doing to protect America's interests. A lot of people say, well, it's hurting Canada. Yeah, his priority is not Canada. He likes Canadians. Priorities, American. And I don't know of any country that wouldn't want a leader that puts their own country first. And I respect Donald Trump for doing that. So, but yeah, we'll see what else will come from it. But when you consider all of that, you consider all the threats, the previous threats in the past, the countries that have kind of started pushing their own agenda or pushing their own encroachment, like Russia and the Chinese Communist Party. Somebody said in the last video that I did in the comments that China had bought like 22,000 acres. I think that's what it was. I'd have to find it. and confirm that. But China has bought so much of Canadian soil. It's mind-boggling how we're not even dealing with this problem, this very real threat that Canada faces, and that's just China. Not talk. We're not even going to get into like really deep. I will a little bit into the other countries that are trying to influence Canada. You're seeing that a lot. The Khalistani movement and their infiltration as well into Canadian soil. I remember and I did a tweet about this. I'm gonna see if I can find it as well, because I was in San Francisco last May, and I'm gonna search it on my phone first because it's easier to search there. I can search San Francisco last May, and I'm gonna wait till I find it. Okay, here you go, and I'll read it out to you. I tweeted about it. I just gotten back, but I just couldn't believe what this guy had told me. And then I met other people there, and they kind of confirmed from the same similar type culture as he was from. I was in San Francisco this past week for a conference when our Iranian Uber driver learned we were Canadian. He asked us why Canada hides all the terrorists, more specifically Iranian terrorists. He said they all flee with stolen funds to Canada. That's the reputation Canada has abroad. We take in and hide the worst of the worst. And we could talk about one after the other where we've actually harbored and hidden known terrorists that are on terror watch lists. I mean, you even have that Kadar that killed American actually killed American and was held at Guantanamo Bay, and we paid him $10 million. Like, we've built a rep, and this guy was Iranian. He says, like, if you go to Iran, like anytime someone gets close to being caught or caught, they flee to Canada. It's like the reputation that we have from this Iranian man. And he's been in the US now, I think, for like 10 years. So he might even be a US citizen by now. But yeah, this was the tweet. And a lot of people wrote stuff in the comments, basically. And then I always provide receipts, because you'll have people that will say that never happened. I don't need to make stuff up. There's enough bad stuff that happens in the world that even if you just know some of it, you can raise awareness to it. Here, what else? And even that fact alone, 484 people who were caught on the terror watch list, caught in the northern border. 484 compared to, what was the other one? Mexico was 169. What's the population of Mexico? Let's find out. What is Mexico's population? Oh. What is Mexico's population? $131 million. So Mexico and Canada, what, we're like 40 something now? It was 37 a few years ago. It's closer to 40, I think. Probably higher than that if we count all the illegal immigrants that we have. But they're 3 to 4 times bigger than us, but yet our numbers are 3 to 4 times higher than theirs. Interesting. Okay, so here's another video of what Americans think of Trudeau. And this just goes to show like as well what that means when it comes to like the discussion of potentially Canada being the 51st state, or even just Canada being run. They seriously consider Trudeau so much of a joke not to be taken seriously. If there's any time that I think that we are the most vulnerable that we ever been, is probably in the next few months before we get our next election. Because if a country was to move and they really wanted to hurt us, that would be the time to do it. But anyways, I'll turn on this video here.
By now, from the pandemic, this guy material. He can't run a cash register at a 7-Eleven. He's a disaster. When I watch him, his mannerisms, his look, his little dabble do ya hair and so forth, I think of Justin Trudeau. He's the Justin Trudeau of California. Justin Trudeau for 10 years has destroyed Canada. Newsom has destroyed California. He's not the only one. Go back to Jerry Brown. Schwarzenegger's another one. By now, from the pandemic.
And just so you know, too, California, it's very similar size population as Canada, and it's just like one state. I was planning on having someone come on the show today to talk about the California fires, but he's still working with the teams today, so we had to reschedule. So tomorrow I have Kevin Wen, who's been working the background of it. Basically, he kind of organizes where all the resources goes when it comes to forest fires in California. There's a proper term for it. He's like a data statistics, whatever. He's one of the brightest people I know. And so he's been working the background, so he knows information that hasn't even been released to the media. So you'll be getting it on the show firsthand, events of what really went on, what were the problems, what were the things that really caused this to get worse, what were the things that could have been done had they had the resources, the proper management of the entire thing. So he's coming on tomorrow. It should be at 12, and we're going to be talking about the California fires again. But it's so interesting to see they're basically using Trudeau as an example of how not to lead a country or how not to lead, and they're comparing Gavin Newsom to Trudeau. So I foresee that happening more in the future as well, because they have so many things in common. But I will say Gavin Newsom is a better speaker than Trudeau. You can tell he's put a lot of time and effort and training into that. I was doing like a profiling of like a behavioral analysis of one of his speech. Actually, I'll play it with you guys, because this part I like doing this part of I'll do it while I'll look for it while I play this next video for you guys. So these are Canadian bomber planes that are in, well, I don't know if they still are, but they were in California helping with the fires. So go Canada for coming to the rescue and helping California with their fires. Here, I'll play that. I'll just play the whole screen, might as well. Quite impressive. Start again. There you go. And they're used to doing this with lakes, usually, not salt water. And I know there's been so much back and forth, people saying you shouldn't use salt water, it's going to destroy the earth, like the ground and stuff. You see storm surges all the time. So salt water has made its way onto the ground before in the past. We see that even in like where I'm from in the East Coast when there's storm surges. So does it have an effect? I think so, but not to the way people say nothing will ever grow there. That's not true. Here, I've just got to put it in here and get it playing. But it's interesting. So they're asking him questions about basically the fires and the handling. And I want to raise awareness, like just listen to the words he's saying, and I'll probably pause it to point out some stuff that I notice as I'm like evaluating if I think he's being honest and truthful, or where I think there's like slight verbal slips, which is something that happens a lot when somebody's not being completely truthful. Their subconscious will choose a specific word over another. But anyways, I'll open this up here so you can watch it with me. You know what? I'm gonna put it like way bigger, and when I explain what I see, I'll switch screens. Or maybe I'll do it here. This way, at least it doesn't make it smaller.
Over the course of the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup, and then the Super Bowl, and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's
Look at his hands.
Just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics.
So these are my observation too. He's using specific words that don't really fit with what he's trying to explain, but his word choice, it's like he's gotten training on what words bring positive emotions to people's mind. Collaboration, unity, things like that. So he's definitely been trained on how to speak to specific issues so that when people are listening, it brings in positive emotions about what the person is saying. But not only that, a lot of politicians have been taught on how to use their hands. So you'll always see like elected officials when they're making a point, they go like this. It kind of seems like unnatural, like they'll talk like that. It's because they say, well, if you put your hands like this too much or like this too much, it's too aggressive. So do this when you're trying, or if you point, it's too aggressive. So do this. It's not as aggressive. Like they'll have training. Gavin Newsom has definitely had some training, but the problem is he's overdoing it. So it doesn't seem natural at all, not even a little bit. So when people are watching that, they're like, okay, he's doing movements to kind of explain what he's saying, but he's doing it way too much. He's doing it unnaturally. There's a balance. He doesn't have that balance. So I'll just replay that quickly here.
President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful.
And not only that, his timing of his hand movement to what he's saying doesn't fit. So a lot, when you're explaining something, your mind is processing your words, and it can often slow down your physical action if you have to think about it. If it's natural, then you don't have to think about it. But if you've been trained and it's something you need to focus on, and it hasn't become subconscious yet, then it's going to be slightly delayed. So if you look at his word choice and the hand gestures that he's using, it looks rehearsed, it's slightly delayed, and you'll see it.
Helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America, to get it down here in LA. We thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that and all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those three iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team of looking and reimagining LA 2.0.
So when he's delayed that Marshall Plan, do you see how he brings it to his mind as in thinking? Planning is slightly delayed.
And we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan?
For
Tell
this
us about
region,
this Marshall
we're just starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires. So we're already talking to city leaders. We're already talking to civic leaders. We're already talking to business leaders and nonprofits. We're talking to labor leaders. We're starting to organize.
So right now, basically, he's talking to you about what they're planning to do to rebuild. So not evaluating his body language here, but just think about the main messaging. Heard about all of this as well. It sounds very similar to the fires in Hawaii, where basically people couldn't come back and build. They weren't giving them building permits. The government basically took over everything. And the same way as it was in Hawaii, they had plans to bring in 15-minute cities in Hawaii, and all these ESG type of building where basically if you're building something new, you have to fit these criterias that are almost impossible to reach. So it pushes it so to the point where they can't get building permits, and then they end up um not being able to rebuild, because if you have a house you're grandfathered and you don't have to fit all these criteria, it's only when you're building something new. So what Gavin is basically talking about is how he plans on building it, but the choice word is Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan. Let's see. What is the definition of Marshall, as in Marshall Plan? Here, Marshall. It goes into like something in Europe. So when you think other terms that I've seen, that martial law would be one of those things that I've heard as well. So basically, it's like a high ranking officer in the military or police, a person in charge. So basically, where it'll be the governing body that controls everything, that decides on everything. When you think about martial law, I'm just going to go back and read quickly here what it said. It's going to be interesting. I'm just going to play the rest of it.
Leaders, we're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts, and how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale, we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency, like the executive order I talked about, time value of delivering projects, addressing building codes, addressing permitting issues, and moving forward to rebuilding and being more resilient.
A clear case that somebody has had the training is when they use, and like, I'm not saying that training shouldn't happen. I think most politicians get that kind of training. But the thing with Gavin Newsom, he's doing it even more to like a really strange level where you're watching this and you're probably thinking, oh, I don't really like him and I don't really know why. Like, you'll see that, like, Hillary Clinton was like that as well. Kamala Harris was like that as well. Justin Trudeau does it a lot. Like, there's some people who are very authentic. They're not one of them. So like, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing that it's not authentically them. Like his choice of emphasis, like I said, on those positive words, he'll say them louder. This is actually like a manipulative technique that you'll see even criminals use. They'll say specific word and they'll put emphasis on that so that you're focusing on that and not the other stuff that they're saying. So, but it's interesting. And then I tweeted about this, but somebody's telling me it's not. So I could be wrong. However, when I was watching this, I'm like, the lighting is so weird, because this would be considered the golden hour when the lighting is super like yellow orangey. It actually, for photographers, it's like the best time to shoot. But the problem is you don't see any of that golden hour light. You see like really bright. Basically, I'll give you a perfect example. So the lights that I have right now are set to white. So if I set them to warm, it changes the look completely. So this would be the golden hour type of look. But then you have also cold. So I have this one that goes to cold. So it changes completely the lighting in my house. But then I put it on white usually because I want it to look, because I have a window there. It kind of makes all the lighting flow better. And then I usually have a lamp behind me that changes the lighting a little bit. But the light bulb's dead and I changed the light bulb and it still wasn't working. But I'm explaining you that because it looks like they're in a studio with a green screen. If you look at the video here, I'll
this
just
community to really develop a
and
mindset
see how
so
all
that
the
at
light here is
scale,
white.
we're
So it
dealing with
could
a s-
see that they have lighting. And if you look at the shadow, see the shadow behind his neck here, the shadow of his arm. That means there's lighting right on top of him, facing him directly. Same with the other guy. If you see that, see the sun is actually on this on the oh, you're not, I'm not showing it. Oh yeah, I am showing it to you guys. The sun is actually um behind Gavin to Gavin's left. So it would be this guy to his right. But yet and the sun is not shining directly on them, but it's shining on things around them. And how do you know that? Here, I'll show you a perfect example of that. I'm just trying to find it. So this here is where the sun is shining. So that gives you an indication where it is, which means all of Gavin's, because there'd be things reflecting, all this light here would be reflecting on his back. His back would be lighted on, almost a yellow color. But when you watch it, it's not. I'm just trying to find one where you see maybe here at the beginning. Yeah. Do you see how it's super dark here? That wouldn't be that like that with the bright part of the sky behind him. So it makes it really look like they're using a green screen and they're just basically standing. Again, someone tried to say that that wasn't the case, that she's been able to recreate that. I don't believe so. Everything kind of looks choppy as well, which usually happens with a green um and then there's this angle that's even more different than see? And the funny part is like it's clear that their camera is a specific way. But what if they just move? You see it moving, but it's choppy moving. It's not slowly moving. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't like deception. I don't like deception at all. If you're gonna go to the scene of the tragedy, go to the scene of the tragedy. Don't pretend you're there. But I find Gavin Newsom just as sleazy and fake and inauthentic as Trudeau. However, he doesn't say and ah like Trudeau does. Okay, so I'm going to read some comments. Jody says, I like the idea of certain provinces becoming the state. So what you're probably thinking is Alberta and Saskatchewan. You know what? If Ottawa keeps pushing things like, oh, we're going to shut the taps to the US, if they keep pushing that kind of stuff, all it's doing is driving Alberta autonomy through the roof. And then Alberta will be more primed to join the US. And to be honest, I'm almost wondering, I'd love to see an actual proper poll done on Alberta to see if the majority of the population would want to join the US. If there's any province in Canada that has similar values that are very similar to the US, Alberta would be it. It's so similar to Montana. So, okay, what are other? Okay, Freedom Warriors says Canada, Gates, Soros are all buying up land. China. Did I say Canada? I meant to say China, Gates, Soros, all buying up land. Here. Oh, this comment. Greenland is a go. The GOP senators are working on a mechanism for Greenland. Canada will be under 25% tariffs. This is only the floor, not the ceiling, until they join the US. Interesting. I don't know if I agree with that. We'll see. We'll see. To be honest, I don't think there's going to be that move. But if it does go in that direction, I think we can expect to see a really, really difficult time for the US not for the US, for Canada in the very near future. And not only that, I wonder how other countries would respond, because they might start looking at the US almost like Russia, where they're encroaching their territories. And then what if the European Union teams up with Putin and all the other countries to try to go after the US, to try to stop the US from further encroaching? I think it's too great of a threat for the US, to be honest. Even if it's economically, I think it's too greater of a threat for the US, because it's going to make them more vulnerable. Personally, that's what I think. So, and let's see what else I got. I'm almost done. I only have two screens open. Oh, I'll share this quickly. Brian Lilly, he says, here's the program for Trump's inauguration. What's interesting, in the name of diversity, they don't ban prayer like we do in Canada. They invite every major religion in America to do a prayer. So they have Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman, Imam Hussein Al Husseini, Senior Pastor Lorenzo, so Church Detroit, Islamic Center, one is Yeshiva University, and then the Reverend Father Frank Mann from the Roman Catholic Church. So basically, they're not banning the prayers, they're inviting all of them to come and do a prayer. I think if you're going to really do diversity, I think that's the true diversity right there. When you start banning or even just not having it, then the people who of faith are not being included. It's exclusive in nature. So good on them. This is a fun video that I want to share.
Then you start doing crazy things.
I identify with this woman. Because I have that kind of husband. You'll see why. I just got to put it up.
Happens to you when you want to know a
Okay, here you go.
sick thing that happens to you when you get into a long-term, happy, healthy relationship. Your biggest fear no longer is cheating on you, being out with another woman. No, I don't even think about that ever. You know what my greatest fear is? His untimely death. So then you start doing crazy things like worrying about seed oils and shit, looking at whether avocado oil is pure when you're at the grocery store. You start doing things like making bread from scratch and only using stainless steel pans, even though they're impossible to fucking clean, but you're worried
I didn't know
about
she was
forever
swearing. Sorry.
chemicals in his body. Did I care about those things myself before we started living together? No, I didn't give a shit. But here I am, shaking a mason jar full of heavy whipping cream and salt so that I can make butter from scratch because I've officially become a crazy person.
So that is me. It's true. When you're in a really happy, healthy relationship, your biggest fear is to lose your husband. And that's me. And I'm like, we need to start eating healthier. You've got like certain risk factors in your life. We need to start addressing those now. We need to eat healthy. I've even made my own butter. That's why when I saw that, I was like laughing. And then my husband, the funny part is my husband actually sent me that video. He's like, this is you. I'm like, I know. Anyways, this is probably one of the shorter episodes. We're an hour and 20 minutes in. But anyways, like I said again, tomorrow we're going to have Kevin Wen come on the show and talk about the California fire from a firsthand perspective of someone who works on all the logistics behind it. So he's been working on that since they started. He does like several shifts. Actually, he wasn't sure what time the show was going to be today, so he took an extra shift, and he's actually doing it right now. So he's coming tomorrow. So we're going to talk about that. And at 12. So that one will be starting right on time tomorrow. On Monday's a bit harder for me to start right at 12 because I have to drive my kids to the city. And it takes me like a good 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, to get there. And then, especially if I don't plan on going again for a few days, like I had to run and grab my husband is a little sick right now. So he had what I had over the Christmas holiday. It was like a stomach bug. So I won't give more details than that. It'll be TMI. But I was like out. I lost like so much weight during the Christmas holiday. And yeah, so he's just getting it now. So he has about like a 2 week, 2.5 week time between being around someone who has it and getting sick. Because my son had the same thing about 2.5 weeks before I got sick. So, anyways, at first my husband's like, "No, it can't be the same thing. It's too long." I'm like, "No, no, you this is what you'll be getting." And it's so funny because I don't think he realized how sick I was, because we were going to see we were supposed to go see family, and I just waited till I was better. And he's like, "Oh, you must have been like faking it or whatever." He just wasn't being as compassionate and nurturing as he should have for someone who's sick. And I'm like, see, I was sick. Anyways, so he's sick. So he had some requests, some special requests. Can you go get this for me? So anyways, by the time I got ready for the show, it took me a little bit longer. But tomorrow will be right at 12. I don't have to drive to the city. And yeah, we'll talk about the behind the scenes, never heard before, of what actually went on in California. This guy knows it because he knows the logistic of everything that was going on and is going on. So I'm just really excited he said yes to coming. So, but yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. If you want to be notified of when I go live, click on subscribe. You can find me on like all social media platform at Nadine G Ness. So whether it's Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, or Twitter, just search Nadine G Ness. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. But I can't go live with those. I've tried it a few times. It's still not working. I'm gonna try to figure it out. I just can't go through StreamYard. So I think I need a few more things kind of figured out to make it work. But I will be posting short clips of the episode. I did post some of the short clips of last Friday's episode. If you didn't get a chance to see it, I interviewed Bruce Party. It was very, very eye-opening. A really good conversation we had about liberty and what it would mean for Canada if we truly had like unstifled liberty in Canada, and what that would look like. We talked about the woke right as well, and that phenomenon that we're kind of hearing being talked about a lot in recent months, and just some of the problematic things that you can see come from that sector of politics, I guess. And just how do we fix our country, and how do we fix Canada and our structures, and what that would look like if we had the best in the world. So it was a really good conversation. So that was last Friday's episode. So the live before this one. So yeah, subscribe to me if you're not already on YouTube, or follow me and set up your notifications so you get notified. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't get notified." Well, make it like a priority thing. But yeah, I will let you guys go, and I will see you tomorrow at 12 Saskatchewan time. See you guys.